No Man's Sky, the game that was supposed to be the end-all everything of space travel but was never able to meet expectations. Is it any good in 2018? Well, that's what we're about to find out. Some of you may remember that No Man's Sky originally released back in August of 2016, and the mass hype and hysteria that accompanied that release. Some may even say there were a couple of lies thrown about. We're not going to dive into the deep into that pool, seeing as how that can completely derail this video. Now, we're only interested in the facts, the cold hard truths about what you can and can't do in No Man's Sky today. That is, early March 2018 for those of you watching this from the future. You crazy time-traveling kids. So the game is only about 6 gigs in size, which makes it one of the smaller games to download and play. There are no loading screens except for the initial startup screen, and at least for me, I never experienced any lag. This all seemingly comes with a price. The draw distance in the game is kinda bad. You can be flying in your ship and have the graphics and trees and stuff literally spawning in underneath you. Then when you land, animals will pop into existence right in front of you. You could just be walking around and don't even have to be in your ship and have this happen. It kinda really pulled me out of the game. The graphics, I would say, are average to below average and a bit cartoony. There are different filters for taking screenshots, but I rarely use them as I'm interested in playing the game and not taking screenshots of a cartoony world. I mean, maybe if it was Star Citizen, but it's not. They've added a couple of different game options. You can enter creative and simply build a base and then upload it to Steam. I put up a video about the most downloaded bases last year. You can check that out if you're interested. The other option is the main game, but you can play it in either regular mode or survival permadeath mode. Obviously survival mode is harder, but really the difference is you get less resources than normal and things kill you quicker. To me it's a bit too much, and I would have liked a level in between, because the normal mode seems too easy, survival mode just isn't fun. You're constantly looking for resources simply to survive. But if that's your type of game, then go for it. One of the things lacking in the initial launch was a story. Well, there's one now. I'm not going to go into the details of that story. If you want more info, I'll have a series of videos on the channel coming up. But suffice to say that there is a story now, and combine that with base building, which allows you to create a base on a planet, and staff it with officers that send you on missions and provide blueprints for you, and the system missions, which are straightforward go here, do this missions. No Man's Sky seems a lot more fleshed out than initially at launch. The base building quest lines can take you hours just doing that, and whenever you get bored you can go run the main storyline or simply travel somewhere new on your own. I'd say the game has about 15 to 20 hours of story. So now we get to the crux of No Man's Sky, replayability. Seeing a new planet for the first time is super cool. Seeing the animals and the creatures and the people, all of that is neat. Traveling to a different type of planet for the first time is cool. It can be dangerous, it can be fun. But ultimately they all start to blend together and become a bit repetitive. The same things are practically on each planet. You find yourself traveling to the same places, just in different locales. Combat is pretty bland. You only really fight sentinels on the land and pirates in space who try to nick your stuff. The fighting gets pretty repetitive. You can buy yourself a space freighter now and move around in that thing, but that novelty probably only lasts 20 minutes or so. You're really only driven by the story and a few long-term goals. Which is why it's perfect for a casual gamer and not a hardcore one. I feel like if you're a hardcore gamer, you'll get burned out on this type of game pretty quick. Combine this with No Man's Sky's progression system, which, in my opinion, is still ridiculously hard to reach, not in a skill perspective, but in an in-game currency perspective. Ships and upgrades are pretty expensive or gated behind requiring to have other things first. I'd recommend scavenging anything when you come across something you're interested in, like a wrecked spaceship, because those things will cost you 10 million credits and it'll take you weeks to get that. So there's still no multiplayer. This is a single-player experience. You can see other players if they're in the game as a white light now, but you can't do anything to them, and I doubt you ever will be. The whole talk about multiplayer is what set this firestorm off at launch, and to be honest with you, I don't know why the devs even talked about it. There's nothing wrong with a single-player game, and that's what No Man's Sky is. They should have said that and moved on. And since this is a single-player game, obviously the community is a little different. You can leave communication stations with messages for other players, but that's about it. There's a pretty active mod community over at nomanskymods.com. I've downloaded a few of them when the game first came out and thought they made the game better. And kudos to the developers for sticking with No Man's Sky, but to me it seems like all of this was planned. If they had launched the game now, I think there'd be less of an outcry because they've had all these free upgrades, including base creation, ground vehicle, storylines, etc. The game is a lot more fleshed out now, and there's things to drive you to continue playing for a good 20 hours or so. Those things, as I mentioned, base building, missions, system missions, progress for your suit, for your ship, and the storyline, all of which you can mix and match at your leisure. Why they decided to rush it out, who knows, but that's not why we're here. So that's the game, but what's the price? Well, it's still selling at $60 on Steam, and at that price tag, you have to compare it to AAA titles. With that comparison, no, it's not worth it. The graphics, the story, everything about it screams it's an indie game, and in my opinion, it's probably worth around the $20 to $30 range, but, every person's price point will be different. So that's No Man's Sky in a nutshell. If you want more in-depth view of the game, check out the Steam Workshops video I put up on the channel, and also the Getting Started video. See ya!